If you were offered the chance of a lifetime, would you take it? Hello and welcome to Engage, and in this episode I've got a very special guest, none other than Chicken Guy Phil. I can't believe that I've got him on the show today. I'm really excited to chat to him. So first of all, before we get into everything, I just want to say a big welcome, Phil Tomasso. Welcome to Engage.
Thank you so much for having me, David. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely my pleasure. Now, if you're unfamiliar with who Chicken Guy Phil is, he was the undoubted star of Guy Fieri's Chance of a Lifetime show, which recently broadcast on the Food Network. Now, I didn't actually get to see the show the first time round because it was broadcast in the US. We still haven't had it broadcast in the UK yet, but through the magic of the internet, I was able to catch up with the show, and I think that's going to make for a much better episode now because I know what the show was all about. I know a lot more about Chicken Guy Phil today, and I'm really looking forward to asking him all about his experiences of what being on a reality TV show is all about. We all want to know what kind of goes on in between the edits, so hopefully Phil is going to share some of that juicy info with us today. Does that sound okay for you?
Oh yeah, I'm all about juicy.
Well, that's a good place to start if you're involved with chicken, right? Fried chicken. The
Yeah,
juicier the better.
exactly.
Okay, so before we kind of get into the whole reality TV thing, I just want to get a bit of background about you because I know that when you're not on TV, you own or co-own a bakery, Something Delicious, with your wife. You're also a parent. You're a foster parent, and you also hold down a demanding role as a police dispatcher as well. So I'm amazed, to be honest, that you've found the time to come and chat with me on Engage today. So again, I'm really grateful that you agreed to do that today. Just to get a bit of background about you, really. Now, I know that you're from Rochester. Now, my geography or US geography isn't that great. I mean, my only experience of New York is when I visited New York City back in 2008. You might see the boxing poster on the wall there where we watched Joe Calzaghe versus Roy Jones Jr. So that seems like a lifetime ago now, way back in 2008. But could you tell us a bit about what growing up in Rochester was like?
Yeah, of course. So for geography sense, I guess it's very upstate New York. We're up by Lake Ontario, which is right on the border of Canada there. So we're practically Canadians, but a little less friendly. Um, so growing up in Rochester, it was great. All my family's here, so we really stayed local. I mean, everybody's here. There's lots of good food in Rochester, lots of great restaurants, fun stuff like that. It's like a fun mid-sized city, I guess. It's not too large, not too small. A lot going on though.
Okay, did you do a lot of cooking growing up as well? I suppose it seems like a bit of an obvious question, but it'd just be interesting to get your insight into that.
Yeah, so my brother and sister and I, we grew up watching the Food Network. Like that was what was on all day long at our house. Used to cook with my mom. She is a great cook. Learned from my grandparents. Cooking was always a big thing. We'd always have Sunday sauce with the family and stuff like that. So my roots are very Italian based cuisine. Then in high school, so I was going to drop out of traditional school. It was not going very well, and I was always on the cusp of failing until I was recommended that I go to a kind of like a trade school. So I picked culinary as the trade. And for the last 2 years of my high school career, I was allowed to go to learn culinary. So I learned culinary. I graduated, I think, second in my class there. and really loved it. And then after high school, I stopped completely. So my cooking experience was done professionally until I ended up buying a pizza place like 4 years ago, and then the bakery now. So I got back into it after leaving it for about a decade. So yeah,
It sounds like cooking was really ingrained into you from a family perspective. I mean, family was like a huge recurring theme throughout the episodes of the show as well, and it sounds like it was, a really kind of warm and nurturing environment. But I mean, just to skip on ahead slightly, in the very first episode of the show, when you were doing the introductions, when we were kind of getting a first glimpse of all of the contestants, you said that when you were young, you were always told that you were a loser. So when I heard that, that kind of really impacted me, and I thought, I want to know who said that to you. So would you mind sharing that with us?
yeah. So as horrible as this sounds, and I don't know if it's the same way in the UK, but in the States we have a school counselor who kind of preps you to get ready for college while you're in high school. Um, it's actually my school counselor who said, hey, don't even worry about going on to, further education. You're not going to be able to do it. Um, I mean, it was shocking to hear. I had teachers all throughout high school who just didn't believe I had I don't know, they just didn't believe I had it in me to go on and do things. And it hurt hearing all that. And so I did. I went to college right out of high school and just a local community college, nothing crazy because I didn't have the grades for it. And I went there and I failed out after 1 year. So I was like, no, they were right. I had a dead end job at the time, nothing really going for me. However, then I went back on my own about a year and a half, 2 years after failing out. I was like, I'm going to give this another try. And I ended up graduating on the high dean's list, all these like I ended up graduating with so normally it's out of 4.0 GPA at universities here. So I ended up graduating with a 3.85 or something like that. So I went back on my own and proved to myself that, hey, I could do whatever I want to do.
As a father myself as well, I understand the importance of positive reinforcement, because I think that the way that things are at the moment, it's really easy to kind of fall into a negative mindset, and I think that it's important for me as a father, as as a person in that position of authority, really, that you should be given as much positive reinforcement as you possibly can. Now, would you say that those experiences that you had when you were younger then maybe influenced your decision to become a foster parent, to perhaps be that positive role model?
The reason this is totally separate, but I'll give you the reason anyway. The reason we became foster parents actually because we had been struggling with infertility for 3 years, and for my wife and I, Stephanie and I, we decided, if we can't have a child of our own to love and to take care of, that, you know, the next best thing or even the best thing would be to help kids who have nothing and kids that are in rough situations. So, in a way, yes. I mean, I want to be able to give um, my foster son everything. I want him to, be the happiest, uh, be able to hold his head up high, knowing that he could do anything. So yes, it in a roundabout way, yeah, that definitely is a huge impact on why fostering I feel is just such a strong thing for me. Yeah,
And in that introduction in the show as well, it also said that despite you being told that you're never really going to amount to anything when you were younger, then that drove you to succeed. Would you say that you always had that sort of entrepreneurial mindset, even if perhaps at the beginning you weren't that great academically?
100%. Yeah. Even from a young age, I mean, I did the basics that every kid does, right? A lemonade stand. But then I took it further. This is a horrible one. I don't think I've ever talked about this on any podcast or anything. So I I started my own lottery in grade school and elementary school, and so I had a couple of dollars, right? And I started making lotto tickets, and I would offer them to other kids, and there was winners in there was losers, and I probably made a good, 50, $60 in third or fourth grade at, age 8 selling these lottery tickets to people. Horrible, horrible thing. But yeah, that was one. I'd resell baseball cards, Pokemon cards, anything that was popular. That was always huge for me. Like I was always doing something, and always would get in trouble for it in school. So it was always like discouraged as a child to get out there and go do something on your own. Granted, one of them was completely illegal, but other than that, I don't know. Like it's something that's not taught in schools, so it's really something that personally you have to be willing to learn or willing to have that drive to get out there and go do something on your own.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there. It's just having that mindset to just try to make something happen, regardless of what it is, and perhaps not looking at the legality of it. And if you're only 8 years old, then you're not going to know whether
Yeah.
it's illegal or not anyway. So I think you could get a free pass on that. But
Right.
putting your
Yeah.
perhaps more dubious business activities behind you, you said that you bought the bakery with your wife, and you did that a month before all of the lockdowns hit it in 2020. So
Yes.
before we kind of talk a bit about what that experience was like during the lockdown, how did the opportunity to get involved with the bakery come up?
Yeah, so my wife had been baking out of the house for a while. Got to the point where she's like, hey, I want to take on more orders. I can't though. So I'm like, let's buy a bakery. I had a lot of money saved up from a job been working on. So I was like, yeah, let's start looking. There's always something for sale somewhere. Somebody wants to get out. Somebody wants to, move, do something else. So we started looking, and while we're looking for the bakery, I found this pizza place that I really liked. So we bought the pizza place, which was in front. So there was like this plaza that's like an L shape, and in the front of it there was a bakery that we were looking at. In the back there was this pizza place that I really loved. So we're talking to the baker, the owner of the bakery, and he kind of wants an outrageous amount of money for it, and we're like, all right, like it's a solid business. It's been there for years, and that whole deal falls through completely. Just stuff was misrepresented. There was a lot. It was a mess, total mess. And the pizza place, I was only at for like 7 or 8 months, and then sold out to my partners because we had found the bakery that we currently own, Something Delicious Bake Shop. So it was just kind of like this weird web of failure, success, failure, and then it just kind of all landed where it was supposed to be.
So when you got the Something Delicious bakery that you're currently in now, did you think that everything was going to be fine from here on in?
Yeah, we were so psyched. We were like, "Oh, this is awesome! This is exactly what we wanted. It's more up our alley than the one we were looking at." Oh yeah, we were so excited, and then everything shut down. So it was a nice surprise.
So prior to the lockdown, though, how was the business doing? Before everything got closed.
So we had bought it in February 1st. That was our closing date of 2020, and I believe it was February 20th when everything closed. So we had a solid 2 weeks of like that was it. So and then once everything closed, um, people you know how people were. People were terrified to leave their house. People didn't want to make the trip anywhere. Everybody was just staying home. So we're like, oh my god, we're in trouble. Um, Luckily, everybody's at home. They're on Facebook. They're scrolling. I kick up marketing because I love social media, online marketing. Like that's a huge thing for me. So I get on there and we're posting all these cool pictures. We're coming up with a different cupcake every week. And we take a business that essentially was done, the 80% of it was wedding cakes, birthday cakes, stuff for gatherings, and nobody's having gatherings. So we had to turn the business around to where our storefront now is making 80% of the bulk, and people are still coming and getting individual, family size cakes. So it took about a month, and after really pushing, we grew our Facebook presence from, I believe it was 4,000 followers to, we got up to about 12,000 followers in about 5 months. And after that, like people were sharing our stuff all over the place. We had a couple things go viral. I mean, we were just posting fun stuff and it really turned out well for us. We ended up having a great year. So,
Yeah, it said on the show that you ended up doing 100% more business than the previous owner. And you did that during a lockdown. So, do you think that if the lockdown didn't happen, do you think you would have done as well? Or do you think that made you think a bit more out of the box and push things a lot harder?
I think the lockdown did us a huge favor. As horrible as that sounds, and I know it ruined people's lives, but for us, we made out okay. Yeah.
Okay, so if we move on then to the show, first of all, how did you find out about it?
The previous owner that we had purchased it from had been on two or three other baking shows at the time on Food Network, just kind of like one-off series and stuff like that. So we kept getting these casting calls for about a year, and I'd keep showing them to my wife Stephanie. I'm like, hey, like, get on there. Like, you're talented. You could go be on a baking show, no problem. She's like, no, I'm too shy. I'm too shy. I'm like, all right, fine. So they keep coming, and I look at them every single time, and they probably send it at least once or twice a week. So finally, this one comes up for a food entrepreneur show. There's no name attached to it of whose show it is. There's nothing really. It's just like, we're looking for food entrepreneurs. We want people in the food space. You don't have to be a cook. You don't have to be a baker. I'm like, sign me up. So I fill out all the information. I make a 1 minute video and I send it in and I hear nothing for like a while. I'm like, well, I tried. And next thing you know, I get this big long text message, like 3, 4 paragraphs long, and I'm just reading it. I'm like, oh my God! Like they're saying, hey, your mailbox is full. We've been trying to reach you for 2 weeks. All this stuff, and I don't check my mailbox ever. I should, but I don't. But yeah, so I'm like reading this out loud, and my wife's like, well, I mean, give him a call back. I'm like, all right. So I call him back. And they're like, yo, we've been trying to reach you for weeks. Like, we really want to do an interview with you. So I'm like, okay, cool. Uh, we set up an interview, but because of my work schedule, like it wasn't going to work. So they had me interview with somebody in California so I could do it at 1 o'clock in the morning after I got out of work at midnight. And that's how we would interview. So every week at 1 o'clock in the morning, we'd do interviews, and eventually um, I got picked. So it worked out good.
So, how many rounds of interviews were there then, out of interest? Do you remember?
Yeah, there must have been at least 5 or 6, I want to say, and all of them were hour and a half long. So I mean, we were burning the midnight oil at that point. I mean, it was getting late.
Yeah, that sounds like a long old process. Also out of interest then, when you purchased the bakery, did you realise at the time that the owner had been on TV, um, involved in several different shows?
So my wife had actually been following that bakery for a long time, just because like I'm sure you follow other podcasters and stuff like that. Same idea. Like you kind of just see what they're up to and encourage them and stuff. So yeah, we had seen that she had been on shows previously and that she had accepted a job at a local university as their head pastry chef. So it was just kind of that had no bearing though on us wanting that business. It just kind of was like a cool perk.
after all of those audition processes, then you made the final six, and you actually beat approximately 50,000 other applicants or auditionees to go on the show. So that must have come as a shock then when you got that final call and they said, yeah, we want you to appear.
Yes, that was a huge shock because um, so like I didn't mention this part at the end. It was the week before we were supposed. They were like, "Oh, hey, if you get on, you got to leave this date." I'm like, "Okay, no problem." And we were like 3, 4 days out from that date, and I still didn't know I was on the show. So I get a call the same day. Actually, I find out that my wife is pregnant, and they're like, "Hey, fly out this date. We'll set it up for you. You're on." I'm like, "Wow, okay. All right. Sounds good." So I mean it was like a very last second, like literally hours before, I had to leave. So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, how did your wife feel about that then when you told her that she just revealed that she was pregnant and you were going to have to jet off to take part in the show?
She was not happy about it. Yeah. I still get stuff for that today. But yeah, she was not happy about it. We'll leave it at that.
Okay, so you're on the show, the very first episode, and it's like a lot of these shows. I kind of compared the show to a cross between The Apprentice and MasterChef. In the very first episode, you're all in this boardroom, all sat around the table, and you've got the judges in front of you, and then in walks Guy Fieri to a reaction of shock and awe, as you can imagine. Was that the first time that you'd met him in person, or had you met him prior to being on the show? Or prior to the show starting, rather?
That was a real first time meeting with him. Yeah. It was so cool. I mean, it was just like that's somebody I've watched from, I don't know if you guys had it, but Next Food Network Star was the show that he got famous from. And that's something that my brother and sister, we used to watch that show and saw him win that first season. So I mean, we followed his career all the way through, so it was just a really awesome moment. Yeah.
What was he like then as a person? Was he was he as you hoped that he would be?
Yes, he is a larger than life personality. Like that's what you see is what you get. Like he's a goofball. He's very business minded. He's very serious like when it's needed, but when it's not, he's cracking jokes and he's walking up, he's elbowing you on the side, going like laughing at something you said or did or whatever. I mean, he's just a normal person that happens to be a multi-millionaire celebrity. I mean, he's exactly what you'd expect.
That's really good to hear then, because we watch the diners, drive-ins, and dives show that's showed pretty much constantly on our version of Food Network here in the UK, and it's a program my partner and we really enjoy watching that. So that's good to hear that he is kind of the same off camera that he is on camera as well. So that's great. How hands on was he as well then in the show?
So we filmed over 5 weeks. It was a long process over a couple of months, and the whole time we're filming, he's filming two other shows at the same time. I mean, the man does not. I don't know when he sleeps. I don't know, when he eats even. I have no idea. But I guess he eats on the shows. But but yeah, he doesn't stop. So he would be at ours for a couple of days when he was on the show. Then he'd be out in California. He'd be out all over the place. So I mean, he was in and out the whole time. So he was there. We got to spend a lot of time with him, which was awesome. Especially knowing how busy he was. But when it came to the decisions, everything like that, he was very involved in everything. So
The very first episode, then you're in the boardroom. You've got the other contestants in there, all jostling for position. There was Chase, who basically announced that he'd had the show won before anybody had barely sat down. You had Ebony there, who was like this no nonsense ice queen, and she was very convinced that she was going to win. You had Kevin, who was this huge ex-military alpha male type of character who, when he spoke, you listen to what he's saying. And there was you as well. The other contestants, they were very kind of sure and convinced that they were going to win, and they were going to win at whatever cost. And when you were asked what you were doing on the show, I thought you gave quite a reserved and even a more sort of British response, in that you said that, and I'm going to read it because I don't want to get it wrong. You said that you were on the show to provide a lifelong quality for your family that they deserve, which I thought was a really great response. What was those early moments in the boardroom like then, when you were surrounded by all of these larger than life characters, as well as Guy Fieri as well?
Yeah, so I'll start by saying this. By the end, all of us were a huge family. I mean, we were competing against each other, but I mean, we still talk today, all of us. So it's lifelong friends for sure. But yeah, in the boardroom, and prior to the boardroom, I'll preface this a little. So I'd meet all the other candidates, except for Caton, who came in afterwards. Um, at we just all happened to be down at the hotel lobby having dinner the night prior to our first day filming. And they're like, "Oh, are you here for this?" I'm like, "Yeah, I am. Are you?" Like, "Yeah." So we're chatting. They're like, "Oh, what other shows were you on?" I'm like, "Other, I was on the local news for 3 minutes one day, kind of recent." And they're like, "Oh, cool. I came in third place on MasterChef." I'm like, "Wow. All right. Well." So going into that boardroom, I knew a lot of them had been very successful culinarily and in life, and I'm like, why am I here? There was a real thought in my head. I was like, oh my goodness, I am so out of my league right now. So sitting in that boardroom, and I get asked, why are you here? My honest answer would have been, I have no idea. I have no clue, no clue. Hopefully, there's nobody getting sent home today.
Yeah, you do find though on these types of shows that they do have their fair share of what I would call professional contestants,
Yeah.
who've been on other shows or who have some kind of professional involvement in the particular area as well. What I thought was quite interesting as well in that sort of scene was that the other contestants, some of them, they were kind of looking amongst themselves, and they thought they had you beat. What sort of first impression do you think you were giving them?
So I already know they were very open with me. They were like, they told me they're like I'm gonna be honest, you're a nice person, but I don't get why you're here. And that was real, and it was not meant to sound cocky or meant to sound arrogant. It was a very legitimate question.
Yeah, so I mean, towards the end of that episode, I think you were kind of being portrayed as that weak link of the group. Perhaps if there was somebody who was going to finish bottom, or if they were going to do it from an elimination point of view, that you'd be the one that'd be like the first to go. Were you aware at that point of how you were, maybe being portrayed or being set up to be portrayed during those early scenes?
Yes, but I mean, I don't think they were portraying me that way. I think it was very fair. I went in there with very low level of confidence, and it took, I mean, obviously you've seen the second episode. It took a lot of, kind of just coming out of my shell. Another chicken joke. There we go. Cross that off.
You were portrayed as perhaps like the weaker link in the first episode, but that didn't really last that long. I was quite surprised actually at how quickly that turned around. Obviously on the second episode, the other contestants were already starting to to talk about you as being a threat to their own success, and I think that sort of came about like during there was a quiz which you did really well at, and you also excelled then when you were doing the taste tests on all of the sauces. Absolutely amazing at how many sauces there were. I think it was 22 different sauces.
Yeah, 22.
So I think the burning question that I have is, what was your favourite out of all of those sauces? Because I'm a big sauce fan myself as well.
So that's really tough. None of them were bad. None of them were like I would eat all of them, but the tough thing is the sauces, they have a sauce for every mood or every taste. So my favorite one is probably the classic special sauce that they have there. However, if you're in a mood for, like a classic Southern American or they had there's so many different sauces. I mean, there was a curry mayo. There's all these things that represent all different areas of the world, which I think is awesome. So I mean, you really could go in there in any craving and you could satisfy that craving. So it's tough to pick one.
I suppose if you've got 22 to choose from, then you don't necessarily have to just pick the one. You can kind of, you know, take a few of them.
They have this cool thing where you can actually order all 22 sauces to try them all. So I mean, you see people come out with these trays and it's just covered in there's all these different sauces in there, which is awesome. And I think if you ever have the opportunity to go there, that it's totally worth it.
Yeah, that would definitely be me. I'd definitely have, if it was like a tasting platter or something like that of all of the sauces, I'd be all over that. Most definitely. You kind of hinted just now as well that you cracked a chicken joke, right? Which is I suppose the prelude to Chicken Guy Phil, which I want to talk about in just a sec, because that was undoubtedly the highlight of the the entire series as well. But I'd heard on another interview that you'd done that it was Christian Petroni, one of the judges on the show, who didn't really have much of a presence, I don't think, on the shows that actually went out. But during the interview that I heard, that it seems like he was really hands-on, and he was offering a lot of mentoring and all of that kind of thing. So I was quite interested to know in how that worked on a day-to-day basis during filming.
Yeah, so I'm a strong believer in hashtag release the Petroni cut, which which is the director's cut. I want it. I've been pushing the other directors to be like, hey, we got to release this. They cut so much for time. Like I said, we were filming for 5 weeks, and we were filming all day long. I mean, we'd wake up at 5 o'clock. We'd be back at the hotel by like 10, 11. And I mean, it was no joke. We were filming a lot, and then to fit it into 6 episodes, stuff had to be cut, obviously. And unfortunately, a lot of it was Christian Petroni. And I don't know why they did it, because his stuff, he's always so entertaining. He's probably one of my favorite celebrity chefs. He's just a funny, funny, funny guy. And there's this scene prior to our presentations on the second episode where he was like, look, I know you're funny. You gotta loosen up, though. You gotta loosen up. So he made me walk out of the back of the Chicken Guy restaurant like 6 or 7 times pretending to be a cowboy and shooting sauces out of like squirt bottles and just being a total nut. And we did this so many times, and we're dying laughing. The camera crew's laughing. Guy Fieri's sitting in there with us. He's dying laughing. They tell him he's got to go because he's being too loud and he's ruining the shot. So me and Christian just keep going, and we're having such a good time. And the whole thing gets cut. So that was really the preparation for why I became, why I went out there and put on like a spectacle versus, giving a organized presentation.
Yeah, I think your performance as Chicken Guy Phil was very good, and I think you could tell that the judges they were genuinely excited by it, and there was that sense of anticipation. They didn't really know what was coming next, and I think that's what made it so good and so memorable. Did you think then that even at, I suppose this was still an early stage of the contest, that you had to do something like that to try to make yourself more known to the judges and get yourself more noticed?
Yes, yeah. And so another thing, they really were surprised. So I guess throughout the process of so we had actually met with Antonia, Chef Antonia first, then Christian, then Manit, and then went on to the presentations. So prior to that, I guess a lot of people had already told what they were going to do and already given their ideas and everything like that. And I have this really embarrassing interview with, I'm so sorry, Antonio LaFaso, where I didn't realize we were supposed to be telling them like, oh, hey, like this is my plans for this is that, and I didn't tell her anything, and she was getting, I think, very frustrated with me, like this is what you're supposed to be doing right now, and I was not playing along. It was very late at night. I was out of it at that point. Um, so it was a total mess, and then uh, once I got to Christian, he's like, "Yeah, dude, come out of your shell, like be you. I've seen your interview tape, like how you got on here. Like you need to be more exciting, like you are there. Like don't be worried about this. Be yourself. Do what you have to do." And I'm like, "All right, I got this." So that it was a huge confidence booster for me.
It was a great performance as well, really entertaining, and as I mentioned, I think that was the genuine highlight of of the entire series. What I wanted to ask you as well though was, I think it was then on the next episode where you were working in the kitchen, and you had this text message come through from your day job. So because of what you said now, that this has been recorded over a 5 week period, I suppose I just wanted to get a bit more kind of insight into how that whole thing worked, because you had this text message which said that essentially if you don't turn up to work tomorrow, then you're going to be fired. So what was that all about then? I mean, did nobody at work know that you were going on the show, or had you just been going off to film and just not turning up, or or how did that work overall?
Yeah, so this was, so like I said, it was 5 weeks, but it was over the course of about 4 months. Okay, so it was broken up weeks, very broken up. And I, so I was doing this without telling them anything because we've been so short-staffed at 911, where I was just like, they offer us this thing where we can do swaps with other employees, which is great. It's one of the best benefits of working there. So any day you want off, as long as you have somebody else who will work your shift for you, you're fine. Well, I got in some trouble because I was maneuvering my way around that. Like, this was a chance of a lifetime. And I used every possible tactic I could to get the days off. Well, they switch one of the weeks of the filming where I already have stuff set up. So I'm like, oh, this is it. Like, I'm done. I'm trying to I finally had to go tell our operations managers and everything, like, hey, look, I've been filming this TV show. Um, there's an 8-hour shift that, I'm not going to be here. Like, I don't know how you want to handle this. They're like, okay, well, if you don't show up, there's going to be consequences, and be ready to deal with those. So I was like, okay. And then luckily, I mean, you knew the outcome, but Guy allowed me to go back. So they really did. They flew me back. They flew me back out the same day. I didn't sleep. It was bad. It was rough. And then I came back and had to do the challenge.
Oh wow! So that was actually over a period of, well, a 1 day period there where you went back home presumably to do the work, and then you had to come straight back out again to carry on filming. Wow.
I got back at 1 o'clock in the morning on the day of my shift. Had to be at work by 7:30 a.m. So I mean, I got a little bit of sleep, but by the time I got home, got into bed, it was maybe 4 o'clock in the morning. Um, and then I flew out. My shift ended at 4 p.m. and I left at, I believe I was back on the plane by 6:15 back in Florida. Got back in Florida at midnight, and then woke up the next morning, and then it was the challenge day.
Yeah, so what was doing that shift like then? Because presumably you must have been thinking that all of the other contestants then would be plotting against you because you were given this grace period to go back home, and yet they had to stay there slogging away in the kitchen and learning more about the chicken guy stuff. So what was that like?
So that was tough. They were upset. However, I missed out on all of that training, and that was, I mean, while I was gone, they were training for two, I mean, I missed 2 full days of training. So that really set me back. And so, I mean, they were mad, but I mean, how mad could they be? Really, I was the one being handicapped from it, so I don't know.
That then led you, I suppose, into the final. Now, going into the final, you were fourth out of six places. At that point, what did you think that your chances were of actually winning?
Not great. At this point, I was like, no, what? I'm gonna get out there, I'm gonna do my best, I'm gonna have fun. So that's kind of what the mindset I went into it with. I knew Kevin was obviously the top dog at this point. I mean, there's no debating that throughout the entire show. I mean, honestly, if I was Guy, I would have picked Kevin the second he walked through the door. I would have been like, hey, yep, you win. Like, scrap the rest of it. He wins. We got this. And I've told Kevin that. He always laughs. But yeah, it was just go out there, have fun, and do the best. So that's at that point, I was happy with that.
Yeah, I think you really did do your best there because that was the fry or fly fest. It's the chicken palm. You did the garlic fries, which did look amazing, and the tiramisu milkshake, which would do absolutely nothing for me, but apparently Guy Guy Fieri absolutely loved it, and he even said that that might even appear on the chicken guy menu as well. So I suppose if you're into tiramisu, it must have been absolutely incredible. When you did that food, I mean, were you confident going in at that point? Did you think, well, if I do this particular menu, this is going to give me my best chance at winning?
Yeah, for sure. My roots are always Italian. I mean, Italian food, making sauce, making anything with garlic. You give it garlic to me, I will make it taste good. But yeah, so that's huge for me. And I knew from the second episode that I'd make desserts all the time. So milkshake, no problem. Like I wasn't worried about that. Um, yeah, and again, like I went for fun. Like that was what I enjoy making, and hopefully, I was wishing it translated well to the challenge. So, and it did.
Well, yeah, it absolutely did. Guy said that your food won like the top amount of votes from all of the chefs, and you were like streets ahead of everybody else in terms of the food. But incredibly, you had the lowest number of votes from the customers, from the punters, in terms of how they enjoyed your food. So I found that quite interesting. So why do you think there was such a disparity then between what the judges liked and what the paying customers liked?
So it was actually the guests, they were actually judging based on the booth. So they didn't like my booth as much as the other booths. So it wasn't necessarily food, it was based on the aesthetic. And my aesthetic, I will tell them, was very boring. Minus the singing. We tried to do that to kind of like be like, "Oh, hey, it's boring, but hey, they're singing." It didn't work.
What came next then was, I think, what happens in some of these like apprentice type shows where you have like a heart to heart talk with with the judges, and you had your time there with Guy as well. It was a really short edit on the show, which I thought was quite disappointing because I didn't really think that it showed enough of perhaps what he was saying to you. But since I've got you on the show now, I was just wondering what type of advice that he was giving you during that conversation.
Yeah, so that was cut very short. I mean, I think on the show maybe they gave each one of us a minute, if that. That conversation went on for a good 15 minutes, probably at least. So I mean, it was obviously they're not going to show the whole thing. That was kind of like just a very humbling moment. Like it was kind of just we're in the thick of this competition, and we're gonna find out who wins next, and we get to sit down with this person that I've looked up to. I've followed their career, everything for decades, almost 2 decades, and it was just like it's hard to explain. Like he was very positive the whole time. Like, hey, like you really showed like you can do anything that you put your mind to. And he goes, I was really worried about you, which he had actually told me off camera before. He's like, yeah, you worried me. I'm like, all right, that's fair. And yeah, and then we talked a lot about doing things for the community, and I mean that's something I'm huge into helping out the community and being a part of stuff, and that's something that he is too, and something we really connected on. It was a great conversation.
It's great to hear that you did have, that 15 minutes there where you could have had a real, a real heart to heart talk there. And I think one of the touching moments there that was actually shown on the show there was that you gave Guy a first responder coin. Could you tell us a bit about what that is? Because that's not something that I'm familiar with here in the UK. Could you tell us a bit about what that is, and I suppose why you chose to give it to him?
That was one thing that they cut out of our conversation that I wish they had kept in there, because it was my explanation for why I was giving it to him. So those are called a challenge coin, and first responders, a lot of different professions are given these coins like, hey, I'm accepting this challenge to serve my community, to be there when I'm needed. And the reason I gave it to him was because during COVID, all the lockdowns, he took it upon himself with Christian Petroni and Antonio LaFaso and Manit Johan, and they helped all these restaurants in need during that time, and they helped the restaurant community, and they were helping the employees, and they started funds for employees and got huge businesses all over the world to donate, and distributed these funds to people who were really in need at that time. So that's what I explained to him, and I said, I helped my community, and I was given this coin. You've helped the restaurant community, and that's why I want to give this to you. So it had a very deep meaning that was cut from the show, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it would have helped a bit. I think if they kept that in, just to give it a bit more context. But yeah, thanks for explaining that. That makes a lot more sense now. But after all was said and done, you didn't win. The first prize went to Kevin. I don't think that was a real shock if you'd watched every episode. I think he was kind of positioned as that front runner and as the more likely winner. I think from fairly early on, even though I think you put up a great show yourself, and I think you would have been an equally worthy winner in that respect. I mean, having gone through that entire process and having such great feedback from the judges, your food was streets ahead of everybody else, like we've already mentioned, but then to not win, I mean, how did that feel? Were you disappointed with that result?
Not at all. No. I won just being on there, I think. So that for me personally was a win for me. And then being able to show, I really hope that, some of those people who have talked, downly to me, maybe saw this and were like, you know what? I shouldn't have said those things. Or, hey, like, maybe they won't say that to somebody in the future, like people really can, and anybody can do anything they put their mind to. So, no, it was a win for me all around. It didn't matter if I walked away with the grand prize or not.
Oh, that's a great answer. So the grand prize, as we mentioned, it was your own Chicken Guy franchise. I tried to look up online how much one of these things are worth, and you're getting kind of varying valuations, but it could be anything up to $1 million. So these things are it's a very serious prize. But I think there was a bit of a twist at the end there, where even though you didn't win your own franchise, Guy said that he would waive the franchise fee for all of the contestants if you wanted to get involved in having your own Chicken Guy restaurant. Is that something that you're going to pursue?
So yeah, back to price. The grand prize was worth about $1.5 million. Um, I've looked into it. I have after the final episode, I actually got a call from a local investor group who wanted to open a chicken guy with me. Since then, talks of it's been slow, so it's still something that could happen, but we'd still be looking at, I believe, about $1.2 million needed on top of the $40,000 franchising fee to get set up. So I mean, it's not an easy thing to complete by any means, but like I just said earlier, put your mind to it. You could do anything you want. So I'm not saying no. I'm not saying yes though.
Even if you didn't go ahead with your own branch of Chicken Guy, then the experience that you had on the show, that must have led to other opportunities for you.
Well, actually, so let me back up a little. Once the show started airing, I would just be on Twitter and I live tweeted along with the show. So everybody who was watching uh, just had great conversations with everybody. So I got to meet a ton of people and made a lot of new friends, which for me, I mean, like that's huge for me. That's a huge benefit from it. And it's something that's continues. I mean, I still talk to these people who watch the show and they're like, oh, I like that you weren't fake, whatever, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, yeah, it was just, it's just me. And so the other cool thing was at the bakery, we've been doing a lot of fun stuff. So we did a milkshake day where I did both of my milkshakes from the show at the bakery. And we had just a huge, huge turnout. Over 200 people showed up to try the milkshakes, and most of them tried both milkshakes, which was awesome. So we just had a really great time with that. We've been doing cupcakes based on some of the desserts from the show. I mean, I've been doing a ton of podcasting, which I'd never done before, which has just been awesome. So that's been really exciting. My local radio, they have me on all the time now. So there's been a lot of just like fun stuff that's come from it, and I'm all about having fun, so I've been enjoying it.
That's great to hear. Any plans to do any more TV, perhaps?
So, my wife doesn't necessarily want me to go away again. However, we have been in some talks for a show at the bakery. We've been in talks with a couple major networks for that. So that could be something in the future that, yeah, can't say too much right now.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But I think perhaps now it's the time to capitalize on the fame and the awareness that you had as a result of being on the show as well, and striking while the iron's hot. So I was going to ask you what were your plans would be for the remainder of 2022, but I guess that perhaps covers some of that.
That definitely covers some of it. But yeah, other stuff. Looking at a food truck for the bakery, do a dessert truck. I don't. We've got so many. I don't like to not be busy until I'm like super busy, and then I'm like, oh God, why did I do this? But no, it's I just have such a good time, like, and my mind kind of just runs wild with ideas to the point where my wife's usually like, just one thing at a time, please stop doing this. But yeah, it just gets wild. So I mean, I just keep going and going and going and going. It doesn't stop. So yeah, who knows? We could be on the moon by the end of 2022. We'll see.
Yeah, who knows what's going to happen over the next few months? But I think you're in a great position at the moment now, where things might just kind of present themselves to you, and Food Network have got your number as well. They might not think they're calling you, they might think they're calling the previous owner, but that could give you a foot in the door to other opportunities as well. If anybody wanted to find out a bit more about you, or if they wanted to connect with you on social media or something like that, perhaps, where's the best place for them to do that?
Yeah, probably Instagram, Facebook. I mean, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and it's all Phil, Phil, Tomasso, Tomasso, and then the number 4, because I'm the fourth. So, yep, that's my handle for everything.
Excellent. The fourth in a long line of Phil Tomassos.
Phil Tomasso royalty.
So what I'll also do then is I'll get the links from you as well, and I can post them in the show notes as well, just so everybody's got easy access to all of your social profiles there, and they can connect with you that way. I appreciate you giving up some of your time today to come and do the episode with me. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much for having me, David. I've had a great time. Like I said, I love doing podcasts, so whenever you want me on, you let me know.
Yeah, well, if another opportunity comes up, then perhaps we could do a follow-up sometime in future.
Awesome, I appreciate it.
If you enjoy Engage, please show your support at engagersclub.com, our exclusive members-only club with enough content, training, and behind-the-scenes access to keep you going until the next episode. That's engagersclub.com. Also, please rate and review this podcast wherever you download them. Stay engaged.